And we've got Sue as well on Zoom. So.
All right.
Wow.
And it has just turned 6:30 p.m. We will start off tonight's meeting with a call to order and a roll call of members. Matt Yetton, myself present. Susan Wood, can you hear us?
She raised her hand.
Okay, hello and welcome. John Christ.
I am here.
Phil Lamoureux.
Here.
Michael Bouchard.
Present.
Molly McCann.
Here.
Neil MacGyver.
I'm here.
Excellent. And Bradford Puffer.
Yep.
Excellent.
Right.
Well, that's pretty much a full board tonight.
Full board, and since we have a quorum, at least a quorum in person, folks on Zoom can participate in their full capacity.
Excellent.
Oh, great.
Did you guys hear that online?
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Excellent. We'll start off with a review of the minutes from December 18th, 2025 planning board meeting. That does remind me that our last meeting was 2025. Welcome back, everyone.
Yeah.
Hope you had great holidays.
Yeah, me too.
I noticed a missing word. And it's an important word because I think the word is approved
Oh,
on the last page, top of the last page. The boundary line adjustment application is by a margin of 600.
very good catch.
And not disapproved, but approved. So that's probably a good word to have in there.
Yeah. Thank you.
One of those words that can actually come back to haunt you by missing.
It's a good one.
Nice catch, John. I'll move we approve the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? Excellent.
Staying.
Thank you. Sue and Neil, are you guys having a delay at all, or are you pretty much on time with us, do you think?
I think I'm on time.
Perfect. Excellent.
Yeah, I abstained. Did you hear that?
We did, yep. Just want to make sure that when we're holding things for conversation or vote, that we're making sure to have you guys here with us. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And moving on to item number 4 on the agenda, communications received by the board.
Yeah, very brief communication. Habitat for Humanity has asked that I share with the board or the public that they are having an open house at the former Northway Bank building this Saturday, the 17th at 2 p.m. And there's not a flyer or anything that I have, but there's a banner on the front of the building that you can look at for more information. And I guess it's to discuss with the community potential plans or what the best use of that building should be. So they've extended that invitation.
Mini golf course. That's what they use it for on the night of the
Yeah, that was fun.
holiday celebration, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I think they're soliciting input on potential future uses, right?
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And we'll move on to item number 5 on our agenda, applications and hearings. Tonight we'll be going over public hearings on zoning amendments 1 through 4 under consideration for the 2026 town meeting. This is the second hearing for all of these amendments. We'll start off with the first amendment. For anyone online or in the audience, what we'll do is we'll introduce the amendment, potentially hold a little bit of discussion if anyone on the board wants to talk about it, then open it up to public hearings, close the public hearings, discuss it further as a board, and then the possible decisions are to move forward with them, not move forward with them, and then potentially a third one. I don't know if our schedule would hold up with that, but
Yeah, if we were gonna schedule an additional hearing, we would have to discuss a special session of the board, because there's not time for any meeting currently scheduled to notice a hearing.
Okay,
within the
great.
window.
excellent. Well, that being said, we'll start off with amendment number 1, which amendment is to amend Article 2, 3, 4, and 7 to make several changes to bring the zoning ordinance into compliance with recent changes to state law. Joseph, do you want to speak on this at all, or does that satisfy you?
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. I mean, it's a pretty large amendment in terms of content. It touches on a lot of different areas, and the purpose is to basically bring the ordinance into compliance with maybe a half dozen or so recently passed pieces of legislation that directly impact what we can and can't do with our zoning ordinance. So, you know, this is the one kind of amendment that we worked on to try to take all of that, put it together, and address all of the areas where the zoning doesn't comply with the state law now, and just put that forward as one kind of omnibus package that the public can vote on.
And I think it's worth noting that if we don't pass this, everything in here is still going to go into effect or already has.
Via the state's
Yes.
decision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it preempts our local zoning anyway.
Any other comments from the board before I open it up for public hearing? It is 6:35. We'll open up this for public hearing. If anyone would like to speak on this First Amendment, please come up to the microphone.
For the record, Tom Newcomb, Building Inspector and Code Enforcement Officer. And, you know, I think that this is good as a housekeeping ordinance to clean up some of these things. I do want to point out one thing where I think we're not actually changing it necessarily in compliance with the state law. And just to follow up on John's comment that all of this will take effect even if this doesn't go forward. And I want to point specifically to the ADU section and Section 2D provisions, where we're eliminating that the ADU shall not be used by more than 2 adults. And technically, and Joseph, maybe you can clarify this if I misspeak, but the state's law said that we can't limit it to more than 2 people per bedroom. And my concern is that that this amendment that we're proposing is going to take away all restrictions. And I would recommend that the board consider that rather than removing all restrictions, that we bring it in compliance with what the new statute says, which is that 2 people per bedroom. Because just
I presume it says no more than 2 people per bedroom?
it says that we cannot limit it to less than 2 people per bedroom, is my understanding of the bill that was passed. Is that correct, Joseph?
Yeah, so the law that was passed basically removed the authority for towns to restrict occupancy any more than to 2 people per bedroom. That would be the most restrictive a town could be. A town could be less restrictive, a town couldn't be more restrictive, and it was coupled with the change to related and unrelated families. So it says you cannot differentiate between related and unrelated families or households, and you can't restrict occupancy any more than we previously discussed. So Plymouth's ordinance previously had basically 3 parts that interplayed with this law. The first one was that in a related family, you could have no limit on the number of people in a dwelling unit. For an unrelated family, you could have no more than 3 people in a dwelling unit. And in an ADU, you could have no more than 2 adults in a unit. And so that was what our ordinance said in the past. And this, basically, the amendment as drafted currently takes that whole chunk of provisions out. But it does not impose any new occupancy restrictions.
So I guess, so what I'm getting at is that I'd like to see that instead we have a limit of 2 people, doesn't necessarily need to be adults, but 2 people per bedroom, which complies with the state, the legislation passed.
It doesn't sound like that's the state law, though. It sounds like that, it doesn't sound that the state limited it to 2. It sounds like they
It says we
said,
can't be more
It says
restrictive.
we
be
can't, we
more
can't-
restrictive.
that we can't be more restrictive. But my concern is that by completely eliminating this, we're opening it up to, for example, yesterday, I did an inspection on an accessory dwelling unit that's, it's existing space in a detached building that is being converted to an ADU. And it's basically, it's a very small, single-floor unit with a loft, the bedroom loft. So if this is passed, that could potentially be unlimited as to how many people could go into it.
Can I,
A few weeks ago, I issued a certificate of occupancy for an accessory dwelling unit that was one room over a detached two-car garage. Again, if we eliminate all restrictions, what's to prevent it from having 4 people in either of those units?
I necessarily
So,
don't
John,
know
you
if that's a
wanted to
bad
comment?
thing.
so I just, well, I had a comment and a question. I mean, the comment being, it's very difficult at this point for us to amend this and still get it through in time, but my question is there anything in other regulations about life safety that would limit the number of people in a building of a particular size?
We don't have any regulations in place that limit a dwelling unit to 2 people per bedroom. And that is something that's come up in discussions when we talk about short-term rentals, when we talked about capacity limits, but overall, there is nothing that prevents somebody from having many people in a bedroom. And I've seen, not in Plymouth, but in other communities, I have seen college housing that is 4 people per bedroom.
Do we currently require that a bedroom have certain amenities? Is a bedroom required to have a closet?
Actually, the building code does not require that a bedroom has a closet, and
I see, my concern is that I seem to recall the last apartment I lived in was 800 square feet, 2 bedrooms, and it was pretty spacious, and we allow up to 1,000 square feet. I don't think it's unreasonable. I don't think it's unfeasible that somebody could put 4 or 5 bedrooms in 1,000 square feet, and then you'd still have 8 or 10 people in that space, even with that limitation. So, like, I'm not sure that it's necessary. If somebody wants to get around it, they're just going to make small bedrooms.
although the
Right.
ADU requirements are limited to 2 bedrooms.
Right.
Is it limited to 2 bedrooms?
Yep.
Okay.
Do the bedrooms have to have an egress, like a window?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's,
Multiple egress. Yeah.
yeah, it's required that you have an egress window out of every bedroom. That's both the life safety code,
Yeah.
It's in the section.
which is the NFPA 101, and it's in the IRC residential building code.
So I guess to go back to my original question, I was asking if there were any limitations, and he said, well, there's nothing that says we're limited to 2 per bedroom, which I get, but I guess my real question is, hypothetically, let's say you have an 800 square foot unit. Could you put 12 people in there and actually have a certificate of occupancy for that and be legal?
You talking ADU?
I mean, 800 square feet would fit into an ADU, and, I mean, are there other codes that come into effect that affect, like you have occupancy limits for buildings and such? Would any of that come into effect for an ADU that would limit the ultimate number of people anyway, even if less than, like, more than 4, obviously, but like I guess that was my question.
So right now, our ADU requirement says limits, our ADU zoning limits it to 2 bedrooms. So it doesn't limit how many people go into those bedrooms, because that's being removed. So so as to any specific dwelling unit, I am not aware of any restrictions that require a certain size of a bedroom and other rooms as well.
Just out of curiosity, when does the sanitation issue kick into place, like septic size? If you have 8 people and you have a system designed for 4,
Well, unfortunately, that's a whole nother issue, and that's that, for example, if you're on, well, first off, if you're on town sewer, then it doesn't matter. If you are on a septic system, and we've been seeing a lot of new ADUs lately. And DES requires that if you're adding load to a septic system, and I don't want to get down into this big rabbit hole, but basically, if you're adding a 2-bedroom ADU to a septic system, then they consider it as 2.5 bedrooms because of the additional kitchen load. But, they don't, DES in evaluating septic systems looks at bedrooms and does not look at how many people are living in that. So you could have a 3-bedroom house with 1 person versus a 3-bedroom house with, 3 people in each bedroom. And they don't differentiate.
And there is,
Please, yeah, John.
So my feeling at this point is we have a limited timeline, and I think this is a pretty good amendment as written. And I don't really see any trouble passing this. If a problem arises, or if upon further conversations, we really do think this is an issue, we can always put an amendment through for next year.
Yeah.
That can, it's an iterative process, making zoning amendments. And if we see it's a problem, or we consider it's a problem for some reason, and we do want to make further changes to this, I would say that could be for next year. And I would pass this as written, especially considering there's not really reasonable time for another hearing on a changed amendment.
I think that could potentially hold up a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments, Tom?
Nope, thank you.
Thank you very much.
thank you, Tom.
Any other comments from the public, or do we have anyone online other than members of the board?
Bill?
yeah, we do have one
Oh,
other
that's right.
person.
Bill, any comments on this matter? All right.
Okay, I'm just listening, thank you.
Thank you. Well, with that being said, we'll close the public hearing at 6:48 and bring the discussion back to the board.
I'm inclined to agree with John that, given our timeline, if this does become a problem, I think we can change it as time goes by.
We do have, we do have the calendar in front of us, and it says
Yeah.
next Thursday is the last day to post and publish notice for a final public hearing, so technically we could make a change. and
We'd
still
have to have a
publish it.
meeting at the last Thursday of January,
Alright.
so we could.
We could, I know,
It'd be very tight.
right.
Because it would have to happen then, the Tuesday after.
I'm okay moving forward with it as is. It's not, as I've said in the past, I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good, and I think we can move forward with this as it is.
I agree. Any other thoughts or opinions?
I make a motion, we move this to town meeting. As written.
I
I
will,
totally agree with that. I think it's time to move on, and I think the way we've got it written is perfectly acceptable, and if it does become a problem, then, like you said, we deal with it, but I don't think there's anything in there that's a problem.
Can I make one tiny non-substantial?
Point
Change.
of order, can I second this first and then we can discuss it?
Yep,
Yes, does that,
that's fine.
yes, so it's seconded, please?
Okay, so just, this is nitpicky, but I think it could be weirdly confusing. Article 3, at the very beginning of the amendment, it says Article 3, Article 4, Article 7, Article 1, and then in the actual language, it says Article 3, Article 2, Article 4. So if we could just make the listing of the articles consistent?
That's an administrative change.
I know it's an
That's-
administrative change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, and that text at the beginning, the descriptive text.
Will not
would
be in the
actually
ballot.
say, are you in favor of
Okay.
Amendment 1? But it would then go on to say, amend the following articles. But it would be slightly different. It would have that additional statutory language of, are you in favor of Amendment blank as proposed by the planning board?
Okay.
And then it would say to amend, so forth. But yeah, I mean, and it's
Should it-
weird that it's
should it
out of
just-
order.
Should it just be in numerical order?
Yeah.
I mean, I can see how it could like line up with the different changes you're making, but like,
Yep.
it might just be easy to put them in numerical order.
I think that, I mean, it's the board, but I think that's
Yeah.
honestly, potentially, it's not actually changing the text of the amendment, it's just changing the description of the amendment that would be basically put on the ballot.
Non-substantive.
Yeah.
Totally non-substantive, just keeping it consistent to avoid any confusion is what I'm thinking.
That works for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, we have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? All right, thank you very much. Amendment 1 will be moved forward to town meeting. Moving on to amendment number 2. Amendment number 2 states, amend Article 4 to revise the accessory dwelling unit section to remove the requirement for owner occupancy of the primary or accessory dwelling unit. Before we open this up to public hearing, any discussion to the board?
Just for anybody listening, it might be just worth noting that although we were just talking about accessory dwelling units, the changes we made previously in the last Amendment 1 are state mandated, and this is not a state mandated change.
Thank you for that clarification.
Which is why we separated it out into a separate amendment.
All right, it is 6:52. We'll open it up for public hearing. Any members of the public that would like to speak on this, whether in person or online, step up and use the microphone.
Again, Tom Newcomb, building inspector and zoning enforcement officer. And my concern with this, both as a resident and as code compliance officer, is that I think there were where we have different zones. I've spoken this board before about this. We have multifamily zones, multifamily allowed in different zones that allow people to own a property and rent out all units. And by removing this requirement with accessory dwelling units, not only are we opening up the entire town to having basically non-owner occupied multifamilies is effectively what we're opening up the entire town to. But also, at least with most of the zones, they have to be attached units, they can't be detached units. Because accessory dwelling units are allowed to be detached, we're creating a lot of problems with opening up new areas to non-owner occupied multifamilies in detached units in the entire town, including the single-family district. And it is really going to change, has the potential to change, the nature of the entire town in creating non-owner occupied multifamily dwellings. So I would urge this board strongly to not move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public, either in person or online? It is 6:55, and we will close the public hearing and bring the discussion back to the board. John?
I'd like to respond to what Tom just said.
Yeah.
These are not multifamily. Multifamily is something that has a definition in this town, and this is not it. And I think to call it multifamily is misleading, and I don't think really does justice to this conversation. Multifamily is not allowed in the single-family residential. This is closest to perhaps a duplex, but it's an ADU technically. And could you have two families on a single property? Yes, which is different than multifamily as we define it in our zoning ordinance. And we already allow rental units in single family that are not owner occupied. And I think this is a discussion that this whole board has had. And we all decided on this board at least, I think most of us at least, that we were okay with rental units that are not owner occupied in a single family, as are already allowed in the primary unit. And I think, again, characterizing them as multifamily, I think is a bit misleading.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Please, sure.
So, John, I guess I'm just, just help me understand. So, when I say it's a multifamily, multifamily is basically two, in essence, two residential units.
In our zoning ordinance, it's 4+.
Okay, so, all right, so, I stand corrected, so a two-family unit, so, which is allowable in every district other than the single-family district.
And I think it's allowed by single family by conditional use permit?
Special exception.
Oh, special exception.
Yeah. So, I guess, so you're essentially allowing, with this change, my understanding of it, and again, help me understand, is that by right, anybody in any zone can have a two-family unit,
Attached or detached.
Attached or
attached or
detached,
detached,
up to 1,000 square feet.
up to 1,000
2
square
bedrooms.
feet. So, which detached two-family unit is not allowed other than if it's an ADU, and non-owner occupied, by removing the non-owner occupied situation, the requirement, then it now opens up the single-family district to now allowing by right, not by special exception, two-family units.
Maybe dwelling units is what we mean, like,
Two dwelling units on a lot might be a better way to put it, because it could be attached or detached.
Yep.
So maybe multifamily, under the definition, is a misstatement. But do you disagree? My question is, do you disagree with me that we are now opening up the entire town to allowing two families, detached and as well as attached, by right, not by special exception?
What I see is we're allowing ADUs, which the state has told us we have to allow, and we're treating them as we treat any other dwelling unit, which is allowed to be rented without owner occupancy. And in many ways, it just mirrors everything else we have in our zoning, which says if you have a dwelling unit, we do not require owner occupancy. And we're not making an exception to that for ADUs, which we have to allow.
But there's a distinction between zoning that allows for two-family versus an ADUs, and I think that's where you and I need to agree to disagree.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
thank you.
I will be curious to see what the town votes on this one.
And ultimately, it is their choice, not ours.
Exactly.
There are other dimensional requirements that go along with even establishing an ADU on a property, correct? It has to abide by setbacks, it can only be maximum 1,000 feet,
Yep.
so,
And I think a lot of this is stemmed from the challenges of housing
right.
over the years,
Absolutely.
and some of this is derived out of that, and these steps to move forward
Right.
to help alleviate that.
Yeah, I say put it to the voters, see what they have to say
Is that
about
a
it.
motion?
I move to put this amendment on the ballot as written.
I'll second.
I'll second that.
All right, we have some seconds.
Just Sue.
John was first, but Sue was louder.
You can have it, Sue.
All right, there is a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions. All right, Amendment 2, we'll move forward to 2026 town meeting. Moving on to Amendment number 3 on tonight's agenda. This is to amend Article 2 and Article 5 to create a new Tenny-Mountain overlay district in the area along and west of Mayhew Turnpike. This overlay would be an optional alternative district, which would allow for a mix of recreational and commercial uses, as well as allowing planned unit developments by conditional use permit, where flexibility could be granted from the underlying zoning ordinance by the planning board. Planned unit developments would allow for a wider array of residential, commercial, recreational, and other uses. Planned unit developments over 250 acres may also propose inclusion of a village core, allowing for higher density of development and increased flexibility. Before we open this up to a public hearing, would anyone like to have any comments or discussion about it?
I would like to say that, I think we did a lot of work on this last year. We have reviewed this. I believe we're in a good, we're as knowledgeable as we can be about it as it stands, and I think that it would be, ultimately, it would be a great benefit to the economic development of town for us to approve this.
Yeah, a lot of thought and effort and input went into this.
Absolutely.
And, I think it would be a great addition to our town.
Thank you, gentlemen. With those comments being said, we'll open it up to public hearing at 7:02 PM. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak upon this?
Brian McKeon, North Country Development Group, is commenting on behalf of Stephen Kelly and the team up at Tenny Mountain. Very quickly, we'll just reiterate everything I've said in the past couple of meetings. We're so appreciative of the collaboration we've had with everybody here, the group, the hard work that's gone into it. And I remember, early of 2025, the board made it a priority to keep it at the forefront of your priorities, and you've done that. And we're really appreciative of that. I mean, you have a ton going on. This is a complex, piece of policy, and we feel very strongly that it's in a great place. Again, we appreciate everything that the board has done, and we feel that it's time to go to the town for a vote. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone online from the public that would like to make a comment?
Yes, can I speak?
Please.
So, I think it's time for, the overlay district to go before, the voters. I think, the developer has done their due diligence, and we are constraining the overlay to what the developer wants to go forward with, and I think it's gonna be good for the town. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other comments from the public online or here in person, it is 7:04. We'll close the public hearing and bring the conversation back to the board.
I would like to say that with the potential turnover of 5 seats on this board, I think it's important to remember that, any planned unit development that gets filed under this, if it's approved, gets reviewed by the planning board. And I think it's important for the public to remember that the planning board seats that are up for election should be considered thoughtfully. I hope that, I know that we have a good board already. I don't know who else is gonna run, but I do think that, it's gonna be dependent on the board at the time that the PUD conditional use permit is filed as to how that's handled, so.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new responsibility on the voters of the town, and I hope that they take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
I'd like to say something.
Please.
My voice isn't that great, but I feel that this is really, it's imperative that we put this before the voters. And I think it's a very good plan, and it would be highly beneficial, not just for the developers, but for the taxpayers of Plymouth in the long run. I think the town really needs it.
Thank you, Neil.
I move we put Amendment 3 to the voters at town meeting, as written.
Second it. Sorry. Did I get
Me. It's okay.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second on the table to put Amendment 3 forward. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Amendment 3 passes and passes here. We'll be going to 2026 town meeting. We'll be going to the voters. Thank you very much.
can I just make one more comment about that? I think it's also important to note that we had a lot of professional help with the Barrett Agency. She did an awful lot of work on this, and it was her professionalism and her experience in this that really got us through this and helped us to develop it. So our hats off to her as well.
You're
Yes,
here.
sir.
Here, yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
thank you, sir.
Yeah.
You're here. All right, moving on to our last amendment for the night. Amendment number 4 is, let me just see if there's a second part to this. Okay. Do want to miss the page. Amendment number 4. Amend Article 3 zoning map and Article 14 to create a Fairgrounds Road residential overlay district generally in the area along the eastern end of Fairgrounds Road to Main Street, which would be an optional alternative to the underlying zoning district, which would allow for a variety of residential uses and for dimensional standards that mirror those of the single-family residential zoning district. Before we speak to the public, any comments or thoughts?
For those who don't have the map in front of them, I would like to point out that it does cover, most of the area covered by the residential overlay district is in the agricultural zone, but a portion of it on the west side of North Main Street is in the highway commercial district.
And it's not all of Fairgrounds Road, it's Fairgrounds Road right to the machine shop area, a little bit
Roughly,
earlier?
yeah, roughly to where the water service stops. Water line.
Relatively, yeah.
Yeah, where service for Plymouth Village Water and Sewer ends.
Good point.
Which makes that investment more valuable.
Right.
That we put water and sewer there, so now we can take more advantage of that, potentially.
Excellent, thank you. It is 7:08, we'll open this up for public hearing. If there are any members here in person or online, please come up to the microphone or raise your hand. And it seems like no one is here to speak upon this tonight from the public, so it is still 7:08, and we will close said hearing. Back to us.
I
A lot of
mean,
work, we've done a lot of work on this too.
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion that we put this forth to voters as written.
second.
Any comments or discussion from you guys online before we move forward? There's a motion and a second on the floor. All right, no more further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I,
Abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, thank you very much. That still passes. So, amendment number 4 will go to the voters for the 2026 town meeting. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are our zoning amendments for 2026 from the planning board.
And 7:10.
Well, 7:10 in 8 months. So
Right.
Well, yeah, but still,
8 months or 20 months?
well, yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. Sorry, Chair.
Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda. Joseph, any informational or pre-application reviews?
Nobody has approached me for requesting a informational or pre-app review. Unless anybody happens to just be here, there's nothing that I'm aware of.
All right,
Sometimes people,
Anyone here?
pop up with a
pop
question.
up at the last minute, but nothing that's been formally requested.
All right, how about other business for tonight?
Yeah, I do have a couple of quick things. So Barrett Planning, of course, had discussed, Judy Barrett in particular, had discussed a community meeting with this board for roughly the end of February, or beginning of March, and she did ask that we weigh in on 2 proposed dates and pick one and get back to her, or if neither of them work, let her know so she can go back to the drawing board. The 2 dates that were suggested are Monday, March 2nd in the evening, or Saturday, March 7th around noon. So that would be either a Saturday or a Monday, both of that first kind of week. Well, no, not exactly. Yeah, that first week in March.
So that's the 2nd and the 7th?
Yep.
Okay. Good for me.
Can you say the time?
Either in the evening if it's Monday or around noon if it's Saturday.
I think we'd get better turnout on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't think
What
we've
we're
done the weekend.
soliciting as public input, I mean, it is a Saturday, but it's still March. Might be snowy, people might be recreating, but I think we'll get better turnout on Saturday than we would on Monday. That would be my preference.
That seems likely. I would agree.
I think whatever can achieve the best turnout. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really.
Yeah.
Do we want to? We are meeting next week. Do we want to put this on the books right now? See if anything else pops up. But I'm really whatever.
Does Judy need a response by a particular time?
She didn't give us a specific deadline. I'm sure,
Sooner the
sooner's
better.
but no specific.
And she has no preference between either one, is fine.
I think their preference is Monday, but they offered both and are happy to do both. So if the board would prefer Saturday,
I didn't realize her
Barrett's happy.
preference was Monday.
these were the 2 sort of proposed dates, and I think, it's perfectly doable to do it on the Saturday too, if the board wants to. That's
could-
why Judy asked us to discuss it.
I could see attendance going either way.
Yeah, it's hard to predict.
Because people, depending, like if it's nice weather, I could see people on the weekend saying, look, I'm just gonna go out. On the other hand, people might be more free on a weekend. So, I mean, I could see it going either way, depending on various factors. And I don't have any strong feelings for myself or based on attendance. Yeah.
Think about it. We'll talk about it next week. I don't have a strong preference either. It's really whatever would bring the best turnout. I don't know what that answer is.
I agree.
All right, excellent. We'll reconvene on that topic next week. And Joseph, candidate declaration filing timeframe.
Yeah, very quick update that the filing period begins Wednesday, January 21st, and runs through Friday, January 30th at 5 p.m. Candidates must file a declaration of candidacy with the office of the town clerk to be included on the ballot on Tuesday, March 10th. That's the gist of it. There is more, but as we discussed, that is the time frame for all of those members who will be up for re-election. If folks want to just keep that time frame in mind in case they were hoping to file for the candidacy. You do have to.
Can I just inquire? And hopefully this won't happen this way, and it'll get sorted out on the way. But let's say we get to like the what is it, the 29th or something, or the morning of the 30th, and it looks like everybody's like aiming for the same open seats, and there's like other seats that aren't even being like considered.
My recommendation.
Is there a possibility that the clerk could actually contact the candidates to request them? I don't know.
So-
So we don't have like an empty seat that's not being run for.
My recommendation is when you go to file, you can ask the clerk which seats have people filed,
Yeah.
and you can choose which seats you run
Okay.
for when you submit your filing.
So we
You
don't-
you don't
hopefully
have,
don't
you don't
have
have to
this.
decide until you get there.
Yeah.
So if you see that there's somebody already registered for, I think if you're going for like the 2 3-year seats would run against each other, the 2 2-year seats would run against, like, any number of people
Well,
that
that's what I would
register for
imagine, yeah.
3-year seats would compete against each other. Any number of people that register for 2-year seats would compete against each other, and any number of people that register for the 1-year seat would compete against each other.
And what is it, the top two get the
Yes.
seats? Okay.
Yeah.
Or the top one in the case of the 1 year.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
so,
of
I
course,
mean,
yeah.
it's not impossible that, there might be nobody who files for the 1-year seat, and then, somebody might just register and run unopposed, and they're almost guaranteed to.
The write-in could win.
I mean, a write-in could win, but like.
Sure.
It comes down to, if nobody experienced registers and there's an open seat, anybody could put their name in and easily win. So my recommendation is check with the clerk when you register and think about it.
Can I ask a clarifying
Oh,
question
perfect.
just to John's? Could someone also just, would it make sense to, can someone put the name in for all 3 seats?
I don't think so.
That's a good question.
Don't think
I
you
don't
can
think you
run
can.
for
No.
multiple seats.
They're distinct positions for sure.
That's a good question.
No, what I'm saying, could you put your name in?
Yeah, could you register
your
for the 1
name
year, the 2 year, and the 3 year?
1 year, the 2 year, the 3 year, could somebody do that? And then you pick which one, if you,
Like, if you win all 3, then, like, it's,
yeah.
You would, that's an interesting,
I
I'm
guess
not
it's
sure.
probably a town clerk question.
That's
Yeah, I would
that's a
ask the
question for
town
Amy.
clerk and,
But I'm just
or the Secretary of
Throwing
State.
it out there.
I would assume no, but
Yeah, I
but
don't-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, either the, yeah, the town
And
clerk.
there's no harm in running for the 1 year seat, it just means you have to run again next year.
Yep.
And there will be, there will be at least 2 people up for election every year. If there's a seat vacated, there would be an additional seat.
It will be on the proper
Yeah,
cycle.
I mean, once we get into the system, there will be 2 3-year seats up every year, and then if there's an interim vacancy, the remainder of that term would also be up for election. It would either be 1 year or 2 year, depending on when the person left their.
I have a question. What about alternates?
Alternates are still appointed by the select board until such time as every planning board member is elected. So starting not this election, but after the subsequent election, the planning
2027.
board will take, after the 2027 election, the planning board will take over appointing alternates.
But I believe the existing appointed alternates could continue to serve. It's just that any new alternates could be appointed by the planning board
Yep.
at that point.
After 27.
After town meeting 2027.
That's my understanding as well.
Do we track the terms for alternates the way we do?
Yes.
do.
Okay.
Yeah, they are,
Currently, they have to request reappointment if their term runs up.
Yes.
and it is a 3-year term, same as planning board.
actually, this is, I hopefully won't come to this, but it's a technical question. Until all the board members are elected, until all the positions are elected offices, or until all the board members are elected? Because there are planning boards in the state of New Hampshire that have a hard time finding people for elected office
Oh.
and end up appointing board members, even though they're elected positions. So until all the positions are elected offices, or until all the board members are elected?
I would guess, and again, this is a question for probably the Secretary of State or potentially for the town clerk, but my instinct would be that it would be once every position has had an election.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
It's the only way.
And hopefully it won't come to that, but it's
Fair
possible.
question.
Yeah, I think the goal is just that, like, you have to get through the first 3 elections of having planning board members elected before that elected board can then appoint alternates.
Very well.
So we will need to amend that's one of the things we should work on next year, is amending our rules of procedure so that in March of '27, we can, as an elected board, we can do the things we need to do and appoint alternates and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one, and I think probably at the work session we might, which is next week, one of the things we might talk about is some planning or ideas for the year. So perhaps that would be a big one, because certainly it would be good to have something in the bylaws that specifically deals with appointing alternates, since the planning board will take that over.
Planning.
Planning.
Perfect. Excellent. Any other business anyone wants to discuss?
Should we make videos again this year?
I think you just volunteered. I think it would be great if we could do videos again, and I don't have time to do it, so I would say Brad and Molly, you had great dynamics last year. If you guys are both interested in doing it again, I would support you.
I'm happy to do it again. And I'm happy to work with Brad again if you want to do it again as well.
More than happy to do it with you, Molly.
Yes!
All right.
Excellent. Sounds good.
I think those were successful last year. I really do.
I
I
did
think you
too.
guys did a great job, and I think the public appreciated them.
Jonathan, you back there?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. You guys work it out.
Okay.
Perfect. Can't wait to see him. Thank you for bringing it up.
Yep.
Doing it tonight after an early meeting.
I have to write them. Calm down.
Any public comments before we adjourn for the night?
Can I follow up on one other thing?
Please, yeah.
When it comes to filing for public office, the only requirement is that you be registered to vote in the town of Plymouth, right? You be a resident and registered to
You have
vote.
to have a domicile.
Yep. To be qualified for an office, candidates must have and maintain a domicile in the town and be registered to vote.
Okay.
Those are the qualifications.
So that really opens the door if people choose to run for any office, not just planning board.
That's correct. And there's also select board,
Yes.
2 terms, town treasurer, supervisor of the checklist, trustees of the trust fund, library trustee, cemetery trustee, but I only specifically mentioned the planning board ones, but they are all covered under the same filing period announcement.
It's a lot of positions.
Democracy at work.
Yeah.
If we have a meet the candidates night, it might be,
There is a meet the candidates night. It's already scheduled.
it might be a lot of people.
Yeah.
Easy one.
I think Mary Beth Bentwood is coordinating it this year.
All right, excellent. Any public comments? If there's no public comments?
I'll just say,
Oh, hello.
there was like some semantic stuff going on here between you guys on terminology, and I know some of this is like nomenclature that comes from the state, but I think you probably, by 2026, should get away from the word family being part of the zoning in general.
Oh.
You know-
I think that causes confusion.
If I can,
Obviously, you're not gonna change stuff that's already there, but like,
Yeah, no, and actually,
if I can address it, I 100% agree. It's not necessarily families who are living in a unit.
Sure.
Dwelling units and other terms are much better than family.
Yeah, no,
And it is the terms we normally use, but I would love to get away from them. I totally agree.
yeah, and I would just note that we used to define, that the proposed amendment would change the definition of currently it's unrelated family or related family. This would change it to family, a group of persons living together as a single housekeeping unit. So that removes any reference in that definition from whether they're related or unrelated, because the reason that family exists in there is because of like single family dwelling is a dwelling unit for a single family. So, to keep that definition, it does, but I agree, it's a good point.
But if the definition family is very inclusive, it's less objectionable as well.
And that was part of the requirement that came down from the state, is that you can't differentiate between related or unrelated householding units.
I believe the unrelated terminology in Plymouth's ordinance is it's related to college housing.
Yeah.
And keeping stuff under control. The 3 unrelated, it was an ordinance that was never enforced very thoroughly.
I've heard this from a few other notable voices in the state about not using the term family to refer to housing types like single-family housing and such.
Yeah, single unit.
Ivy Van comes to mind.
Oh, interesting, I hadn't heard that. I mean, you could say like a I've seen other ordinances that instead of family, they use housekeeping unit, or like household unit, which is similar in term. You just have to then go through your single family, multifamily definitions and make the change as well, because that's the reason there is even a definition of family is because a single family definition is dependent on defining what it means to be a household or a structure occupied by a single family. I'm simplifying that, but that's why it's in there, or well, I guess I should say that's the function it serves. But there isn't anything that says it has to be called family.
Another thing is you simply call it a dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Very good.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey.
Abstentions?
Opposing your own movement, diabolical.
It should be noted that I made the motion and opposed it.